Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and it's Dwarf Day. Yes, the Arcane Journal for the Dwarfs in Warhammer the Old World has just gone into pre-order. And Games Workshop were very kind enough to supply me with a copy so I can talk to you guys about it on the channel. Dwarfs being a big thing for me, as you can imagine with the channel name. So, let's talk about this. We're going to do this like the last time. It's been a while, but we're going to talk about the new roster styles, the special rules, the new units, and there's a fair amount of them, which we can talk about quite heavily, but we're not going to go over the whole book like the items and the runes, for example, out of respect for Games Workshop. So without further ado, let's begin. So one of the new rosters is known as the Royal Clan, and as you can imagine with the other Arcane Journals, things do change around. So for characters, you have to take a king or a thane, and you can have 0 to 1 Anvil of Dooms or Rune Lords per 1,000 points. When it comes to runesmiths, you can have as many as you want. So yeah, no engineers in this roster, but don't you worry, there's a lot of fun to play around with. When it comes to core, at least 25% of your army must be spent on Royal Clan Warriors, we'll talk about them a little bit later, Longbeards, and Quarrelers. When we go up to special, up to 50% of your army's point value might be spent on this, and that includes as many hammerers and dwarf carts, not including minor carts though. These are two different things, we'll again talk about them later. 0 to 3 war machines chosen from the following list per 1,000 points, so you can take 0 to 3 bolt throwers or 0 to 3 grudge throwers per 1,000 points. For rare, you can spend up to 25% of your army's point values, and those include rangers, iron breakers, and iron drakes. Now, yes, it is a smaller roster, but you do get a bunch of mercenaries that you can play around with, which is up to 25% of your army's point values. These include Imperial Dwarf Mercenaries, 0 to 4 Doom Seekers, and finally 0 to 1 Goblin Hewers per 1,000 points. It's already adding in a bunch of Slayers to play around with, but don't you worry, there's more Slayers to come. Finally, a little bit of a change here is that your Battle Standard Bearer could be a Thane or a Runesmith. It's a pretty cool system. I do like the Royal Clan. The Arcane Journals have definitely been bringing in a lot of new flavor when it comes to playing Old World, but now let's talk about the special rules. Ancestral Fury is the first one, and during a turn in which a unit in a Royal Clan army makes a charge move of 3 or more inches, or made a follow-up move, it's very important to take that as a note, it gains a +1 modifier to its strength characteristic. That means that you're going to get a lot stronger there and do a lot more damage. Dwarves are pretty good at damage overall. Riches and Heirlooms are next. Character models in this army may spend an additional 25 points on runes. In addition, units that are able to purchase standard runes may spend an additional 25 on the standard runes once again, with the exception of Royal Clan Warriors, but that's because they've got that put into it. So your banner runes are going to get pretty freaking tasty. Lastly, we have Striking a Grudge. After deployment, but before the first round begins, nominate a single enemy character. For one reason or another, this individual has earned themselves a place in the clan's Book of Grudges. Roll credits, and must be brought to justice. All friendly models get hatred against that enemy character, and you get an extra bonus 75 victory points if the character is killed, has fled the battlefield, or is fleeing when the game ends, which overall, yeah, pretty damn good. Alright, now we can talk about the next roster, which is the Expeditionary Force. So, for characters up to 50%, as per usual, you need to take either 1 Engineer or 1 Engineer Sapper, 0 to 1 Demon Slayers or Dragon Slayers, so you don't have to take those, and as many Thanes and Runesmiths as you want. For core, at least 25% of your army must be spent on the following: Dwarf Warriors, Thunderers, or Dwarf Carts, as many as you want, 0 to 1 Rangers per 1,000 points, and 0 to 1 units of Scout Gyrocopters may be taken as a core choice per 1,000 points also. When it comes to special, you've got 50% of your army's points value, and you can take as many miners, scout gyrocopters, and standard gyrocopters as you may wish, and 0 to 3 war machines per 1,000 points, which are bolt throwers, grudge throwers, and cannons. When it comes to rare, you can take up to 33% of your army's point value, and that is as many gyro bombers as you want, 0 to 1 unit of slayers, 0 to 2 war machines from the following choice per 1,000 points once again. These are organ guns and flame cannons. You also have a pretty good option of mercenaries. Once again, this is 25% of your army's point value might be spent on as many Imperial Dwarf mercenaries as you want, 0 to 2 Doom Seekers per 1,000 points, and 0 to 1 Goblin Hewer per 1,000 points. Remember, when it comes to the mercenaries for both factions, you do have to have the misbehaving mercenaries rule. And before we finish, there is a change here too, where your Thane or your Engineer can be your battle standard bearer, which is quite important for an Expeditionary Force. You're going to be taking a decent amount of Engineers, so might as well, right? There's also some special rules, so let's talk about them. The first one being Expeditionary Marksman. 0 to 1 units of Thunderers per 1,000 points may be upgraded to Expeditionary Marksman for 1 point per model. These guys do not suffer any negative to hit modifiers for moving and shooting. In addition, any Dwarf Engineer may be upgraded to a Expeditionary Marksman for plus 10 points. Once again, yeah, you can move and shoot, and since you're going to be using quite a few different guns in this army, it's always good to make use of it, plus it's a cheap upgrade too. Function over form. When writing your muster list, you may reduce the toughness characteristic of any following war machine by 1 to a minimum of 1. This is for the cannons, organ guns, and flame cannons, but since their toughness has been reduced, they also lose the move or shoot special rule, meaning that you can move your cannons and fire. Get into a better position maybe, get that really good grape shot. And finally, we've got Subterranean Ambush. If your army includes a unit of miners, you may, after both sides have deployed, but before the first turn begins, deploy 2 32mm round mine markers, plus 1 additional marker for each additional unit of miners your army includes. These markers can be deployed anywhere on the battlefield that is not within the enemy's deployment zone, 12 inches of another friendly mine marker, 6 inches of an enemy unit, and 3 inches of a special feature or another objective marker. When a unit of miners would arrive onto the battlefield as reserves, it can be placed anywhere on the battlefield within 6 inches of a mine marker, but not within 6 inches of an enemy unit. It cannot charge this turn and also counts as having moved for the purposes of shooting, but can otherwise act as normal. This means if you like playing sneaky dwarfs, it's possible. People have done that before in older editions, and this actually is a better version of that. Alright, we're going to start talking about characters now, and the first one is Fulgrim, and some interesting stuff is coming here. You see, Fulgrim is a single character. He's not on the, oh god, what did people used to call it back in the day, the magical toilet, where you used to have people carrying him around and so on. But yeah, he has some pretty good stats. You can see that on screen right now. He's 250 points, by the way, which is quite interesting, and he's on a 25 by 25 base. So yeah, you're going to be having him as a Thane character. That's how he's represented. In terms of special rules, Gromrel Armor, Grudge Law, we'll talk about that in a second. He's got Hatred, Orcs and Goblins, Magic Resistance -1, Rallying Cry, Resolute and Stubborn. So Grudge Law is once Fulgrim has set the Grudge Stone, we'll talk about that in just a second, both he and a unit he has joined replaces Hatred, Orcs and Goblins special rule with Hatred All Enemies special rule. With the Grudge Stone, it's during any start of turn subphase, Fulgrim may set the Grudge Stone. Once set, Fulgrim and any unit has joined gains the Unbreakable special rule and automatically passes any panic test they're required to make. However, once the Grudge Stone has been set, Fulgrim and his unit cannot choose to flee as a charge reaction and cannot move other than to give ground to make a follow-up move or reform. So it's a pretty odd thing. It's more or less just making a immovable object in a sense. If you can get a decent sized unit, you'll basically lock down a bunch of enemies, but you won't be able to move. So I don't know. I feel like it would be very, very situational because it will open you up to charges. Next, we do have the Armor of Skaldor. The Armor of Skaldor is a suit of heavy armor. In addition, its wearer has a 4+ ward save against killing blow or any wounds suffered that were caused by an attack that has multiple wounds special rule. It does make him kind of susceptible to dying standard if you're dealing against like Chaos Warriors and so on, but yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. It's one of these things where named characters can be kind of decent, and I feel like there's better named characters in this book. We're going to talk about them in just a second, but yeah. Lastly, his weapon, the Grudge Settler. So this is a weapon that has +2 strength, -1 AP, armor bane 1, and magical attacks, and it also has been inscribed with the Master Rune of Smiting and the Rune of Parrying, so you're going to need the Forces of Fantasy for that. It's not bad. I mean, it's not the best character that I've seen so far from these books. I don't like the idea of staying still. It's kind of odd. I mean, it's a dwarf. You're not going to be moving much anyway, but you're going to be susceptible to getting hit from multiple sides, that's for sure. Maybe you guys can see a better reason to use him. Maybe that's just me. The next named character is Ungrim Ironfist. This is the Slayer King of Karakadrin, and I would say that he is much, much better. He's more expensive though at 315 points, but you get the King of the Slayer Hold. This means that he can join a unit of Hammerers or Slayers. The unit of Hammerers will then get immune to Psychology and Unbreakable, so as long as he remains part of that, and he can be taken as a general of a Royal Clan army. Keep in mind that the two characters that we've discussed so far say that they can be included in any Dwarfen Mountain Holds army. That includes this option, so Kings and Thanes, basically. Now, what makes this rule even better is that Demon Slayers and Dragon Slayers may be taken as character choices, super cool. 0 to 1 units of Slayers per 1,000 points may be taken as a core choice, and 0 to 4 Doomseekers per 1,000 points may be taken as special choices. So if you want your Slayer army, this is pretty much the way that you're going to be able to get it. It's a bit disappointing that we don't have the Slayer Pirates, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, let's go on here. We've got Slayer. When this model makes a 2-wound roll, a roll of a 4+ is always a success regardless of the character's toughness, which is going to be quite good for you if you're dealing against stuff like dragons. Then we've got the Slayer Crown. The wearer of the Slayer Crown improves their armor value by 2, and its wearer has a 5+ ward save against any wound suffered. This is important because you've already got Gromril armor, by the way. You've got quite a lot, like the specific stuff that you could imagine. Death Blow, Immune to Psychology, Magic Resistance -2, Rallying Cry, Resolute, Slayer, and Unbreakable. And then finally is the Axe of Dargo, which is the standard attack, magical attacks, Monster Slayer 2 as a special rule, Strength +2 there, and then -3 AP. So it's going to be really good for killing Chaos Warriors. And the last named character is Berlock Daminson, who is surprisingly cheap. 85 points, and his rules are actually fairly decent. So Dwarf Crafted, Gromril Armor, Hatred, Orcs and Goblins, Magic Resistance -1, Prepared Positions, Range Finding Optics, Resolute, Stand Back Chief, Stubborn. So let's talk about these. Prepared Positions. During deployment, you may entrench a single non-character model whose troop type is War Machine and a single unit of Crawlers or Thunderers. An entrenched unit is considered to be behind partial cover and to be defending a low linear obstacle. Should they move, then they're no longer entrenched, but yeah, this gives you cover fire, which is quite decent if you're going to be dealing against stuff like, say, for example, Wood Elves with their absolute ridiculous range. Now we've got range finding optics. Unless Berlock is fleeing or engaged in combat, once per turn during the shooting phase, a friendly unit of Crawlers, Thunderers, or Dwarf War Machine that is within his command range can either re-roll any to hit rolls of natural 1 or re-roll a single artillery dice. In addition, Berlock and any unit is joined do not suffer the usual -1 to hit modifier when shooting at long range. There's my cat. Next, we have Stand Back Chief. A character with this special rule cannot be targeted by enemy shooting or by enemy spells, whilst it is within 3 inches of a friendly unit whose troop type is War Machine. So if you've got him fair back there just to help out your War Machines, you're not going to be hit by any spells that can just snipe him out, which is great. We do have the special weapons here, so the first thing is the Furnace Hammer, which is -2 AP and flaming attacks. Now, before you actually make any attacks, you roll an artillery dice to determine the strength characteristic of this weapon. If a misfire is rolled, yeah, you don't make any attacks and you lose a single wound, so you're going to be a little bit suffering there. But this guy's mostly for range anyway. It doesn't really muster too much. And then finally we got the Rivet Gun, which is 10-inch range, strength 3, -2 AP, armor bane 1. And it's got the bonus here. If the 2-roll hit is successful, this weapon causes D3 hits to the target, rather than just the usual 1 hit. So yeah, you might just do 1 wound, but you might get lucky and be able to potentially do 3 wounds. See what I mean? Like, these two characters just seem much better. Ungrim is by far my favorite. He's the most expensive, but I think that he is my absolute favorite. Alright, we're going to start talking about the new units because there's a fair amount. The first is the Dwarf Engineer Sappers. So this is a character, and it's for 70 points, which isn't too bad, to be honest. You get them with a hand weapon and heavy armor, but you can actually take a pistol or a brace of pistols, and you can also take a great weapon and a handgun. And as per usual, you can get them the weapon, armor, or talismanic runes to up to 50 points, which is not too bad. They've got two special rules, the first one being dig in. The rule is as follows: during any command subphase, if they're not engaged in combat, this character may attempt to lead their unit in the digging of some field works by making a leadership test, using their own leadership. If this test is passed, this character and any unit they have joined becomes entrenched. An entrenched unit is considered being behind partial cover and to be defending a low linear obstacle. And again, if you move, you lose the cover. But that's pretty good, especially if you're going to be using a lot of shooty boys. Finally, we do have hostile terrain. So hostile terrain is any enemy model that ends its movement within the command range of one or more characters with a special rule that are not fleeing or engaged in combat must take a dangerous terrain test, which, you know, for a sapper, having a terrain rule, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's pretty good, don't get me wrong. It's pretty much just like throwing grenades all over the place. I kind of like it. The next is another character, Doomseekers. Yeah, Doomseekers are characters now and not units. Pretty good stats all around, pretty good attacks all around if you get lucky. If not, it's not going to work out too well. And they are 50 points. They get all the usual stuff, so weapon runes up to 50 points, Death Blow, Doomseeker, that's their special rule, we'll talk about that in a second. One thing that's pretty good here is they do get impact hits, D3+1. They are loner, magic resistance -2. It's very much like the other Slayers. Now, they also do get Vanguard, which is pretty tasty, and let's talk about their special rules, the specific ones to them. So, Doomseeker. At the end of the battle, a Doomseeker that's been slain is worth no victory points. However, if it's still alive, the enemy gets the same amount of points that it's worth, so including the runes, as victory points. Which, yeah, you know, just send it in to die, essentially. It's not too bad, I'd say. First to the fray. This model increases its maximum possible charge range by 3 inches, and when it makes a charge, it may apply a plus D3 modifier to the result. Finally, we do have Whirlwind of Death. So impact hits caused by this model are resolved using the profile of its whirling blades of death. In addition, when this model makes a roll to wound, a roll of +4 always is a success, regardless of the target's toughness, which is, yeah, pretty good, actually. I have no complaints there. Remember that these units aren't just for the dwarfs. So 0 to 3 Doomseekers may be taken as mercenaries for the grand armies of the standard dwarfs, by the way, and also the Empire of Man. So, yeah, if you want them with the Empire, I could see this working out pretty well, to be honest. Alright, so now we've got Royal Clan Warriors, and this is where things get really interesting. So this isn't a new unit in a sense, it's actually more of a kit basher. What you have to do is get yourselves a box of hammers and then give them either hand weapons or shields, or then give them 200 axes if you want to give them the Gromril Great Axes. Stat-wise, yeah, pretty decent. 10 points per model. You can get them with full command if you want to. The Gromril Great Axes is +1 point per model. Mind you, the Gromril Great Axes are pretty good because +2 strength and -3 AP. It does require 2 hands, and it does have strike last. The usual stuff is there, so Resolute, Shield Wall, Magic Resistance, Gromril Weapons, Gromril Armor, which is pretty damn good too. They are naturally there with hand weapon shields and heavy armor for 10 points. Not too bad. You can get them drilled, stubborn, and veteran. I like these types of units. I just don't see a reason right now to use them myself. I'm not putting all the point values, by the way, because I don't want to put all the information, or else there's no reason for people to buy the book, and then I'll get slapped, I guess. But yeah, let's move on. Imperial Dwarf Mercenaries, 8 points per model, decent stats all around. Heavy infantry, they're classified as. They've got hand weapons and light armor, but the thing is that this is a really interesting dwarf unit because you can give them great weapons, you can give them spears. It's been a long time since we've had spears for the dwarves. Someone actually corrected me in my video recently. It was actually 1987. Now you can actually upgrade them to give them shields and also replace their light armor with heavy armor. The same thing with being able to get drilled, veteran, and standard runes also. Usual types of special rules also apply, so you've got Magic Resistance 1, Resolute, Shield Wall, and you can take these guys as mercenaries for the Dwarfen Mountain Holds and also the Empire of Man. I mean, well, they're Imperial Dwarfs, what do you expect? I don't see too much of a problem. I wouldn't take them with the Empire, in my honest opinion. That's mostly because my Empire army is mostly focused on guns, but I could see some people taking it. And this is where we get to the more interesting units. So we got the Scout Gyrocopters. You can take these into units of 1 or units of 2. 60 points each, decent stats all around. They've got the hand weapons, clatter lightly armored, which counts as the heavy armor for them. And we've got a bunch of special rules. As you can imagine, this is a fly 10 thing, and it's got impact, it's D3, which is pretty good. Magical resistance, swift stride, skirmishers, and vanguard, which I really like. Honestly, they're very, very cool to have. So, extended formation. Whilst in skirmish formation, every model in a unit of scout gyrocopters must be within 3 inches of another model, rather than the usual 1. Fair. Hit and run. Should it win a round of combat, a unit with this special rule may choose to fall back in good order rather than making a follow-up or pursuit move. Then you've got some extra special rules, which is in regards to range stuff. So you've got Armor Bane 1, Dwarf Crafted, Move and Shoot, multiple shots, D6, quick shot. And this is because you have a clatter gun, so 24 inches, strength 4, -1 AP. And the way to use this is you have to represent them in a different way, obviously. So Scout Gyrocopters are represented by regular gyrocopters assembled using the canards from the tail of the gyro bomber in place of the usual canards. With bombs and a clatter gun instead of a steam gun. I know some people who have gotten the old school ones online, the metal ones, and they're just using that. I was kind of hoping that Games Workshop would do the same thing. It'd be nice. Maybe they'll do a made to order for that to happen, because I like kit bashing, but like the metal one, right? The old school gyrocopters would have been perfect here. Next, we've got dwarf carts, and this is where things get super fun because there's 2 different types. You actually get 2 units here, and 65 points, not bad. Both of them are cost 65 points, so you can choose one or the other. Armor value 5+, you put it on a 75 by 50, well 50 by 75, and you've got the Bugman's cart or the Miner's cart. This is where things get really interesting because they're 2 different things. They've got impact hits, by the way, D3, which is actually kind of interesting. I'm just happy because I've got a lot of those grudge ponies. I've actually been painting one up. If you see me on Twitter later on after this video goes live, I would have probably posted one that I was working on recently. I didn't get sent that from Games Workshop, by the way. It's more, I have a stupid amount of Skull Pass boxes. But yeah, Bugman's cart. So, during the command subphase of their turn, any dwarf unit that is not fleeing or engaged in combat that is within 6 inches of a friendly Bugman's cart that itself is not fleeing or engaged gains a +1 modifier to its movement until the end of that turn. Which I think is kind of funny because, I mean, you're going to get moving more because you're having beer, but yeah, why not? And then the Miner's cart. So any dwarf unit that is within 3 inches of a friendly Miner's cart that is not fleeing or engaged in combat may make a stand and shoot reaction and or a shooting attack as if it was equipped with blasting charges. That's on the Forces of Fantasy book, right? Additionally, when a Miner's cart loses its last wound to an enemy attack during the combat phase, roll a d6. On a roll of a 4+, it explodes. Every unit, friend or foe, within 3 inches suffers d6 strength 3 hits, each with -1 AP and flaming attacks. Now, these can also be taken in your Grand Army, so this is the generic one that you can find in the Forces of Fantasy books as 0/4, and they are a rare choice. Which, to be honest, it's not too bad. For 65 points, you're kind of laughing. It's pretty good for what it is. I'm really, really happy about this. And lastly, of course, we've got the Goblin Hero, 120 points. Yeah, so 2 crew. It's not too bad, I guess. It's a shame that they didn't give us the Malachi model, but apparently they used the excuse of Malachi is not born yet. I mean, we could have used that as a engineer slayer, but okay. So, hatred to orcs and goblins, immune to psychology, magic resistance -1, skirmishes, and unbreakable. Also, the Goblin Hero itself has 36-inch range, which isn't too bad. Strength 4, -1 AP, Armor Bane 1, Cumbersome, Move or Shoot, and Whirling Doom. So Whirling Doom is a pretty interesting rule. With a single salvo of spinning axes, a Goblin Hero can cut through several ranks of troops. When shooting a Goblin Hero, a roll of artillery dice before making any rolls to hit. The number of shots fired is equal to the roll of the artillery dice plus a d3 modifier. This is per rank, including the rear rank, even if it's incomplete, if you're in the front of the rear, or per file, if the Goblin Hero lies in the unit's flank arc. However, if misfire is rolled, you don't take a shot and you roll on a stone thrower misfire table. You could potentially get a lot of shots here if you're dealing with, say, for example, a massive horde of goblins and so on, which I imagine that you would be, considering that even though they've just recently nerfed the fanatics there's still going to be a lot of fanatics, and there's going to be a lot of goblins in... you have to take them in groups of 30 to be able to get 3 fanatics now. So if they're going in like ranks of 5, it's going to be good shooting for you. I haven't been able to use any of these just yet. To be honest, I still need to paint mine. Oh god, the pile of shame is getting pretty brutal. I've been painting up a bunch of ogres recently, and I'm going to be painting up savage orcs, but yeah, I need to sort this out too. But it does look like quite interesting unit. All of them actually look pretty good. I'm more keen on the carts. I think the carts have been my absolute favorite here, but there's still more to talk about. So yeah, let's jump in. I want to talk about one of the new rune sections, because there's 2. There's one for engineer runes, which is literally just basic. And then there's a really cool system for the Slayer ones, which I'm pretty interested in. And I don't want to talk about everything in the book, because again, I don't want to get in trouble. It's a big thing here. So yeah, so runic tattoos are an interesting thing, because Doom Seekers can take up to 3 runic tattoos, Demon Slayers can take up to 2, and Dragon Slayers may take a single runic tattoo. I like this because, again, it gives you that whole, I can make a Slayer army, but also no, because we're missing out on Slayer pirates. It's weird that we didn't get a Slayer-themed list here, but you never know for the future, right? So, the first thing is the Rune of the Dishonored. So, Demon Slayers and Dragon Slayers only. Once a model with this runic tattoo is reduced to their last wound, they gain a free upward save against any further wounds. Also, if they're dead by the end of the battle, they're not worth any victory points. But if they're still alive, they're worth 100% of the total point cost. Rune of Endless Battle there is another one. This is 40 points. The last one was 50, by the way. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. During combat phase of any turn in which a model with this runic tattoo is charged, every attack it makes that causes an unsaved wound roll allows it to make an immediate additional attack. Though you can't make additional attacks from the additional attacks or any impact hits, which kind of makes sense. Next, we got Rune of the Reckless, 35 points. A model with this runic tattoo gains the Frenzy special rule, and during the combat phase, it has a +1 modifier to their rolls to hit. However, enemy models that target this model during that combat phase also have +1 modifier to hit. Rune of the Hateful, this is 30 points, gives the model hatred to all enemies, which, I mean, pretty good. Rune of Grit, 25 points. A model with this runic tattoo has +1 modifier to its toughness characteristic, which is always quite useful. Rune of the Dauntless, 15 points. A model with this runic tattoo must always issue and accept challenges if possible. During a challenge, this model may re-roll any failed to hit rolls. Again, super good if you are making a really killy Slayer. Rune of Wrath, a model with this runic tattoo has +1 modifier to its attack characteristics, that's 15 points. Warrior's Rune, 10 points, gives you +1 weapon skill, and Rune of Blazing Fury, 5 points, gives you flaming attacks. Which isn't bad for 5 points. Fighting wood elves, why not, right? I'm pretty happy with this Arcane Journal, to be honest. I have been looking more towards Chaos as one of my core factions, but this Dwarf one's pretty good. I must admit, all of the Arcane Journals so far are pretty good. I do feel like the Dwarf one and the Orc one are probably better than the original too, but I guess that's how it always works, right? The first ones are always like the framework, and then they start getting better and better from there. Even then, I'm not saying that they're bad in any way, shape, or form. The Bretonnian one's pretty decent, so is the Tomb King one, but like, you know what I mean. But yeah, pretty happy. I hope that this continues and we won't be waiting too long. I really want to see like Chaos one. I'm really into Chaos right now, and then I don't know, an Empire one would be fun, because like Empire's always been the most popular faction, but overall I think it's quite impressive. Slayer's always cool, and my only complaint, again, I've said this in the video like a few times, no Slayer pirates is just odd. Like the models have held up quite well when you compare them with the current Slayers, because it's going to be the same ones anyway. It would have just been cool to have them, but overall, yeah, pretty good. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. It's going to be coming out early today because the embargo is pretty early. So Godspeed to you guys trying to make some purchases today. I'm going to be trying to do the same thing because I need some goddamn Slayers. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.